Hi, I'm Brandon Lane, and this is my presentation for dry floodproofing a structure for CM course 4311. So there's going to be two different types of floodproofing. The first type is going to be dry floodproofing. This technique is going to be the more expensive of the two out of the dry and wet floodproofing. The overall purpose of the dry floodproofing is to keep the interior of the home dry and prevent a flood from entering the interior of a home. The wet floodproofing is a little bit different. The purpose is to allow water to enter the home, but to flow freely and drain freely. It's going to be more cost efficient, the wet floodproofing, and it's going to be more flexible for design. Dry floodproofing is the idea that the structure is to be watertight and below the design flood elevation. Any open interior area must allow for water flow. So the basements, garage, shed, as you can see in the diagram on the left side of the screen, openings allow for floodwaters to enter enclosed area below floor, such as the basement or crawl space, a shed, any open area that doesn't have valuables where water can easily flow and exit. Pumps can also be used to drain the water. So dry floodproofing has two different types. There's going to be passive and active. Passive is the automation of flood prevention barriers from advancing floodwaters. It can be operated remotely, and the passive floodproofing generally has lower insurance premiums because it doesn't have human intervention, which can result in error if not done. The active dry floodproofing is going to require human intervention, which can result in human error. Because of this, there is a higher insurance premium from this technique. So common practice includes installation of watertight materials that reduce or eliminate water invasion during temporary submersion. These materials can include structure opening barriers, flood logs, permanent flood barriers, passive flood barriers, glass flood barriers, and flood pumps to keep water from continuing to come in and pump it back out of the structure. The effectiveness of the dry flood proofing is it's more effective if so long as the flood duration is short-lived, generally about 24 hours, no longer. It can begin to damage the barriers and eventually seep through and damage the interior of the structure. Lower flood depths are preferable for this. As you can see, generally they only go 1 foot above the design flood elevation. So once water starts pouring over that, it's going to begin entering the structure. Human intervention in the active dry flood proofing can result in human error, resulting in interior structure damage. Adequate warning is going to be required to install the protections. Both the active and the passive are going to protect the structure from floods so long as they are properly implemented. They are going to both require regular maintenance and review. Advantages of dry flood proofing can be such that no additional land required for flood proofing the structure. Whereas if you have a levee or a flood wall, you have to build around the enclosed area to prevent water from entering that area. There's funding available under the FEMA mitigation grant programs, and the dry flood proofing or flood proofing in general is often less expensive than other retrofitting. Disadvantages for the active dry flood proofing are going to include the human intervention, which can result in human error, thus a higher insurance premium. This does not limit the possible damage from wave action or high velocity flood flow. Therefore, should waves go over the flood protection measures, water will enter the interior of the structure. They are high maintenance and can disturb curb appeal. For maintenance and inspection, you must ensure the proper fit of the barriers, panels, flood shields, and closures. This is to, should there be a flood, you have to ensure that you know where the pieces go, how to install it, the proper means and methods to get it done. Any cracks and leaks can lead to breaks or water penetration in the barriers. Also, mold can be a big issue. Excessive vegetation growth can require trimming and thus not being able to install any barriers if it's not properly maintained. The mechanical equipment in the passive dry flood proofing needs to be made sure that it's working properly and that when you activate it, the flood barriers rise, everything works as it should. This requires periodic inspection to ensure the proper functioning of the protection methods. Failure to deploy the flood prevention methods can result in structure damage and require measures to reconstruct the structure. Cost efficiency of the dry and wet flood proofing are going to be roughly that dry flood proofing is going to cost about twice the wet flood proofing. But to help with some of those costs under the FEMA mitigation grant program, there's funding available should you choose to implement these types of protection measures. Uh, These protection measures are going to protect valuables, interior structure, and have an insurance kickback should you implement them. Retrofitting existing structures, you're going to want to look at the feasibility of elevating the structure in order to install new measures for flood prevention techniques. The construction limitations during implementing these measures can limit and cost a great amount of money to implement. You may want to look at relocating the structure or demolishing the structure and rebuilding elsewhere to prevent these floods from occurring often if they are in a flood zone. Insurance is going to require that these protection methods are going to extend to the base flood elevation plus 1 foot. Active flood proofing is going to have a higher premium due to human interaction, which can result in human error. Passive flood proofing will have a lower premium due to the automation and controlled flood protection. Example 1 is seen here. The flood shield is to prevent flood water damage to the structure, and which can result in lower insurance premiums. The residential example is for failure. If you fail to maintain these and install these flood prevention measures, the interior will be damaged, and wasted allocation and resources to the flood prevention measures would result in a damaged interior. Water cannot enter through these openings so long as they are installed properly because they're impermeable surface. So the other flood prevention techniques can include relocation, flood walls, elevating the structure, levees, integrated flood proofing, which is going to be a combination of the wet and dry flood proofing. In summary, flood proofing is an effective means at reducing damage from flooding. The benefits can include lower insurance premiums and protection of property and sound peace of mind. Thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions.